So the deal was I would go in to the offices every day, 4 to 6 hours, and surf the web. It wasn't dark web back then, but you would surf these criminal forums. You would target people, have conversations with people, identify potential people to be arrested, help build cases, and at the same time start talking to the Secret Service about these dynamics of cybercrime, those three necessities, how these environments work, everything else like that. So that was my job. I was paid $350 a week to do that. They had 2 recording devices, so I was on a laptop outside line hooked up to a 50-inch plasma monitor on the wall. Secret Service was on a desktop computer right next to mine, outside line. 2 agents in the room, 1 South Carolina law enforcement agent in the room at all times. So 3 people in the room at all times was supposed to be there. So the first 2 weeks, they're very diligent. They're paying attention to everything that's going on, everything else like that, asking questions, everything else. But you're seeing somebody just surf the web every day, all day.
Is that phone vibrator?
It is.
Oh, it's okay.
There. So
Shit's like my freaking brain's gonna rattle out.
See, the agents watching that every day, they get bored after a while. And what happens is they get so bored that they start to watch porn. Yeah, now they were, at the same time, they were recording everything that I was doing. They had Camtasia that was taking snapshots of the screen like every few seconds. So they'd take a snapshot of the screen and save that. They were using Spectre Pro, which would capture the keystrokes of everything that was going on. All right. Now, at the end of every night, that would go on a DVD on a spindle. Okay, so you see that, and you're like, shit, that's a large spindle of DVDs. They're probably not going to go through that stuff. At the same time, they're starting to watch porn. I'm of the opinion, fuck it, let's see what we can do. So I start to break the law inside Secret Service offices with them in the room with me. And do that. Yeah, not the brightest guy, dude. Not the brightest guy.
Well, I mean, these aren't the brightest dudes either. Secret Service agents sitting there watching porn.
There's some crazy stories about that. So I do that for the next 10 months. Now, when I say crazy stories, like, for example, we were hacked at one point. So this guy, Max Butler is the guy who did it. But Max, because they were having me open any type of file that would come in that would help you build a case. If they're going to send you pictures of counterfeit currency or fake IDs or credit card numbers or anything else, open the file. That way we've got a copy of it, okay? So you'd open it. Max attaches a keylogger to one of the files, all right? And he starts capturing all the data, starts locking me out of the accounts, everything else like that. So what happens is one day I walk in the office. I usually go in the office about 4 p.m. I walk in the office, go to sign in. As I'm signing in, I get a phone call because I had a burner phone that was issued to me as well that was left at the office. So I get a phone call, get on the call, and he's got this TTYL stuff. This for hearing impaired people, it's kind of an automatic voice that comes across. And he's telling me he knows who I am, everything else like that. So Secret Service is like, what the fuck's going on? They think I'm doing it because I'm trying to get out of the investigation. So they're like, get in the car. So we go down to the apartment. They search the apartment. And then they figure out after a while, oh, no, we've got an attacker that's doing this stuff. So this guy had a keylogger on her system. I'm telling them it's a keylogger. They're sitting there going, for 3 months, they allow the keylogger on the system. The guy's capturing all the data, everything else that's coming through that machine. We weren't talking, so it was not evident that I was an informant at that point because that machine was strictly about criminal conversations, so, but he thought it. Max thought it the entire time. Now, at the same time that was one story. After 3 months, I walk in one day and Bobby or Brad, they were the 2 agents in charge. I think it was Brad. He looks at me, he's like, I think we got a keylogger on the machine. I was like, no shit. And he was like, let's format it today. And I was like, excellent idea. So that was the end of that story. But the other big story, I'm driving back to the apartment after work one day. Brad calls me, and he's like, Brett. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, we may have another keylogger on our machine. I was like, what's going on? He's like, well, that site La Cosa Nostra is automatically installing keyloggers on machines. And I was like, who owns the site? And he's like, none of your goddamn business. I was like, look, I'll come in the morning. We'll fix it. He's like, done. So what had happened was this kid in Canada had been arrested sent to prison. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police got the kid out to act as an informant, to set up a website, a honeypot, and start gathering data, getting IP addresses, everything else on all these people that were visiting the sites. So that was the idea from the RCMP. All right. The kid, one of the things the kid did was he put a keylogger on lacosanostra.com, so anybody who visited it, it would download the keylogger to their machine, and he could start getting data like that too. Little did he know, it had been installed on my machine too, working for the government. So I go in the next day. Now, I didn't know that he was an informant at this point, the kid, right? So I go in the next day. I'm usually let directly into the office. This day I'm not. This day I have to wait out in the waiting area. So I'm waiting out in the waiting area. Out comes Bobby. I'm like, Bobby, I really need to know who owns the site. He's like, well, I'll ask Brad. I was like, okay. So he goes in the back to ask Brad. I hear Brad yelling all the way from the back toward the front. Tell him it's none of his goddamn business. I was like, okay. So they take me back down to the room, the office where I'm working at, this big war room. They take me down there, and I'm like, well, what do you want me to do? And they're like, well, what would you do if something like that usually happened? And I was like, well, I'd shut him down. Do what you usually do. I was like, okay. So I crawl up in this kid. I start reaching out to my contacts, everything else, find out who owns the site, find out that the kid had been in jail, find out that the kid was mysteriously released from jail with charges still pending and everything else. Oh, that's odd. And I start talking about it. 48 hours later, site shut down, kid's back in prison. Washington calls Columbia. What's your fucking monkey doing? Yeah, we're coming down. So Brad comes back down. Do you want to stay out of prison? Yes, I'd like to. Well, if you want to stay out of prison, the best thing you could do is say that you didn't know anything was going on, that you just did it on your part. I was like, okay. So Washington flies in because they're thinking the monkey has done something. So Washington flies in. They thought they were going to ask me some questions. Washington doesn't even talk to me. They pull me off after 2 hours of interviewing with the two agents who are telling them a bunch of bullshit. Washington gets me in there, and they ask me, hey, why aren't you targeting Ukrainian cyber criminals? And I was like, I am. We'll do it more. And that was the entire conversation right there. So we ended up shutting down another law enforcement's operation just for shits and giggles. Is what happens. So that's some of the stuff that goes on in those offices at that point. Now I want to say this though, those guys, they were really good guys.
Yeah,
they were.